Welcome everyone to CDI's Laserfiche webinar titled Brighten Somebody's Day, Use Color in Laserfiche. My name is Kyle Niebel. I'm the technical trainer here at CDI. We're going to take a look at this topic here. There we go. And the topic today, we're going to learn how to create colored templates that allow you to visually identify different document types and make each day brighter. Our topics today are the following: how to set up template colors based on document types. In other words, we're going to go into the admin console and take a look at how that's done. How do we set up a workflow that will dynamically change the template colors based on document status? Meaning we're going to take a look at Laserfiche workflow today, and then talk about some best practices when changing templates and some configurations that we need to look at and be aware of when we're setting up our templates. And we've even got a bonus topic here today, which will be a fun surprise for all of us. We'll take a look at that. So our first topic is how to set template colors based upon document types. In order to do this, you'll want to have access to the Laserfiche administration console, whether it be the Windows version or the web version of the admin console. In the web version, they call it the web management console, but the same concepts apply. We'll go to the templates area and we'll create our templates, and we'll talk about the details about that in just a moment. Another setup is our workflow that will allow us to change the template colors based on document status. A little screenshot here, a little preview of what the workflow might look like, where we can set up various reasons why we would change the template based on metadata being assigned to a document. And then when we're setting up and changing our templates, we want to make sure that we're being aware of where the folder is in which these documents are being changed, and set up some rules on our workflows to make sure that this workflow doesn't trigger inadvertently on the wrong documents. We'll take a look at all those details here in a moment. And our bonus example is going to be how we might set folder colors to indicate that there are documents in the folder as well. So a little bit different concept, but very useful as well. I think you'll all enjoy taking a look at that. For any of the topics we covered here today, the video from today's session will be up on our Cities Digital YouTube channel. And then if you have any questions that you want to pose to Laserfiche's online answers forum about certain specifics, that's a great resource. Laserfiche VARs, users, and staff will typically respond if they can to any questions posed in the answers.laserfiche.com forum. Just requires a free Laserfiche support site account. There's a solution exchange site that Laserfiche has for different solutions for different verticals and different business needs within those verticals. And then the Laserfiche support site can be reached either at laserfiche.com/support or support.laserfiche.com. So some great resources there. So that being said, let's go ahead and dive in and take a look at our first topic, which will be setting up our templates. And to do that, we'll want to be in our Laserfiche administration console, which we'll go ahead and launch here. And we'll log in as our admin account and take a look at our metadata. So we're going to go into our repository. Obviously, this is mine, not yours. So in your repository, you'll go navigate into the metadata management area, and you'll want to go to your templates list. For my demonstration here, I have created 2 templates that will be used when we change a value on a field on a document. Now, the templates themselves actually are just duplicates. I just named them slightly differently, but if we created one and we open up what it looks like, it may have field values on here. In my case, for the demonstration, I don't really want to put any field values on here, but you can have field values, and they should be the same on both templates. However, the template name might be slightly different. As you can see here, I named it doc status-approved with a color, and this is where we can set those colors on our template. So when the document metadata changes, the workflow will use a different template, and then we can see here, there is the color that is being assigned to this template. If you leave the template color as default, Laserfiche tends to pick its own color if it senses the need to do so, but you want to actually configure your colors here. And this is the only set of choices for colors available. You can't add any other colors. You can't choose anything different than what we see here in this list of colors in the dropdown. Having done that, go ahead and click OK, and you've got your template. We'll open up the other one. It's the same template. On this one, actually, I have the status field on here as well for our documents, and I chose this red color for the denied one. Kind of makes sense. If we go back, I think I also have, oh, I didn't put that one on here, but let's put the status field on our template here as well, just for sake of consistency. So now you can see we have our two templates. You could have more colors depending on your settings, but make sure that they're all mostly identical, except for maybe a slightly different name on there. Fields will be identical, name slightly different, and then set your colors as appropriate. All right, so that's your baseline for doing the assignment of colors. You need this as your basic information, right? So having done that, we'll probably want to go then to set up our workflow so that when we change the status on a document, the template gets assigned. And in our workflow designer, if we bring that up, take a look at a design that we might want to set up, and it wants to display a little bit too large here. There we go. I think we'll get that sized here appropriately. There we go. And I'm going to go to my rule manager. And I've actually built, by the way, if you didn't know this, in your workflow designer, you can create your own custom folders so that you can put your own workflows and organize your workflows by a different method than what comes out of the box. So as you can see here, Laserfiche has some categorizations of workflows. It's got an all workflows list, recently published, workflows with enabled rules, workflows without enabled rules, and some other choices here as well. I've decided to organize some of my workflows because there's just too many in my all workflows list, so I like to do that. So how do you create a custom folder for your workflow designer? Just click Add New Folder, and then give it a name. And then once you have created that, then you'll copy the workflow name, and then go to that folder and paste the workflow name in there. It doesn't recreate it, it's just a link to the same workflow. So you can have the workflow in several different areas here in the workflow rule manager. All right. Now for the workflow itself, in order to change the template, what we want to do is give it some rules. And I've already built the workflow. I called it Brighten Somebody's Day document. Let's see, there we go. Template workflow. So in there, and we'll come back to the start rules here in a moment, but all workflows, in this case, in our example, will need to be triggered based on a particular event within the repository. So let's open up this workflow and take a look at what we have configured. And we'll move this over a little bit, move our properties off to the side here. And we're going to take a look at what we've got here. Now, my view, I'm by default showing summaries. What's the summary? In the workflow, it's got the workflow title here, the green start, and it's got the summary values. But notice for every single activity in this workflow, it has some information that is being displayed. And it's actually coming from the properties over on the right side there in the blue box, and just displaying all that. So in my case, I'm going to turn that off because it just makes it a little bit cleaner to see what's going on. All right, so we want to build a workflow that changes the template, in other words, changes the color on the document when that document is set at a certain value with a certain field value. And in our case, the other item that we had actually configured was the, and we'll take a look at that real quick. We did assign the field called status. So we're going to use a field in our list called status, which is going to be our trigger to change the template. Okay. All right. So we'll do that. And then we'll need to retrieve the status when the document changes. Okay. So on that, we've got our field, and we're retrieving the status value, and then we're going to use that to make some decisions. And so what I did was added a conditional decision. I've got that listed in my frequently used list. Conditional decision is under flow control on the tools list on the toolbox on the right-hand side. And in this case, I have several different branches, so I would use the conditional decision as opposed to the conditional sequence, which is just a single branch. Conditional decision, we can make many branches, as we can see here. So I added 3 of them. You would think you only need 2, right? Approved, denied, and maybe exceptions. I should actually add in exceptions, but in this case, I actually set it so that if you changed it to something other than one of the statuses that would change the color, I set the template color back, or in other words, I actually cleared the template. So let's take a look at the conditional branches here. And by the way, as we go through this, if you want to post questions or mention something in the chat window, I am watching that. So if you have any questions, feel free to pose them as we go through. On this branch though, branch 1, the approved status, we've gone in and added the value here, status equals, and then approved. How do we do this? Well, we have our metadata. And so basically, in order to do this, we click add condition. I'll just duplicate what I just did above. Click on add condition, clicked on token. We did retrieve the value of the status field, and then we set it to equals, and then typed in the value that we're looking for. In this case, I typed in approve. I'll actually delete that line because that's all I need. And so if that is evaluated to true, then we're going to then run the assign field value activity. I did rename this out of the box. It's called assign field value, but you can rename any activity on your workflow. So that's kind of fun. And in this case, I then, having set that, I came over to the right side on the properties, and on the template, by default, it starts off at keep the current template. But in this case, we want to change the color. So we need to choose doc status, and then whichever template you want to choose. I chose approved. The other one is going to be denied on our next branch. And that's all, right? It just changes the template, and you're good to go. The next branch, as we can see, the condition is of the retrieved field value status field is denied. If that's denied, then we're going to change the template and use the doc status denied template. Fun times. All right. And then finally, just to make sure that we're being consistent, what if somebody switches that to not denied and not assigned or approved, right? Neither one of them. Well, we need to do something a little bit different. And in this case, if we take a look at this branch, I've got a little sophisticated with workflow. It can do some really fancy things. And we can see that we've got 2 different conditions, and that's called a group. So these groupings here, you start, normally you'll just have one quote group, but in this case, I added a group, and one grouping is if the conditions of the status is empty, then go ahead and set and clear the, well, we'll show you what it does, but it's theoretically going to clear the template and not assign any color. In the other case, if there's some other value, other than approved and denied, but not blank, we want to clear the template as well. So in this case, I've got if all of these conditions are true. We could even say if any of these, and then maybe we could switch them up as well. So the logic here really should be another group. Well, if it doesn't equal approved and does not equal denied, then it could be something else. So theoretically, this logic should let us get to the next step, which would be to assign a different template or unassign the current template, your choice. All right, pretty fun. Okay, so that's the action that the workflow should do. Now that you've got the action assigned, when you save your workflow at the first creation, if this is not the first time you've edited it, if this is being created at the very first, when you go to publish it, yes, there's a publish button up there. That's the save option here. But workflow will allow us to publish that workflow, and with any changes, it'll go and validate to make sure that you don't have any issues. You might have seen it flash very quickly there, and then do you want to save it? And you'll say yes. Now, at the point that we do this, it'll save the workflow, but then it'll ask you if it is the first time you've saved it, do you want to create any start rules? And let's go ahead and take a look at that here on our rule manager. So here's our workflow in the list, and we created, or I created, two what they call start rules. And we'll just move that up a little bit here to take a look. And they're both enabled. You can see the checkboxes here. And one is if an entry is changed, and one if an entry is created. So we can specify all kinds of different reasons why a workflow might start. Typically, it's because the document or some entry was created or moved or changed, right? Fairly common. There's about 7 event types that we can look for. The most common are the 3 that I just mentioned. And in this case, I'm only using 2, but I've specified some information as to when it will start. And if you've never seen the workflow start rule wizard, let's go ahead and edit this rule and take a look and see what it's doing. As we can see, we've got a name. The rule name by default takes the name of the workflow. Now you can change this, and many times I will just put in parentheses the event type in the rule so that I know this one's when documents or entries are created as opposed to anything else. It's also been enabled, and then finally once we click next, we can then set up our conditions to tell it exactly when and how to start. And in this case, we've got a lot of conditions. But it's fairly straightforward. The workflow engine will evaluate each one of these lines, one after the other, and as long as they're true, it will continue to evaluate. If any one of these lines is false, it will stop the start process and not even start the workflow. So it's kind of cool. So is this entry a document? Well, it should be. So in this case, yep, it's a document, great. Is it in a path that starts with the 03 Brighten Somebody's Day folder path? It might be in a subfolder under there because we're using the start with evaluator. But if that's true, then it will then drop down to the next one. And if the entry template is one of those 3, if any of these 3 templates have been applied, it will then run the workflow. Okay, so we've got that. Now, the one thing we want to do is add a final condition. And I'm going to move that down here and make sure that we get that in place. And I'm going to say user does not equal and my workflow account. Now, there's a workflow account that everybody should have in their system. Some people do use admin, but I don't recommend doing that. You should have a workflow account created. It doesn't have to be licensed. You don't need to use a user license to have this account. It's special when it's used with workflow. It behaves like a full user, but it does not take up a license. So go ahead and make sure you have that. Now, why do we add this? Well, notice if the workflow changes a document to a different template, without this, this workflow would trigger again, even though I just changed something. manually as a user, then the template would change and therefore would trigger the workflow. So I want to exclude any activities that the workflow itself is doing, and that's what we do here. User does not equal workflow. So that tells the system, ignore any activities that workflow actually does in this case. All right. With those set, go ahead and publish those properties and hit finish. Now, if all these same rules apply, except you just want to set another event type, right? Guess what? You can copy that rule and then paste it, and then that'll bring you into the other one. And in fact, this one I should actually mention, it should be changed. All right. Next, and then let's check it. Notice the event type up at top, we have either created, deleted, moved, changed, etc. And in this case, I'm just going to leave it on what it was already, which is changed, and that's why I put that in there. But we still want all the same rules to apply just when things are changing. Now, I should go in here and make sure that my user does not equal workflow is also in here, or whatever you named it. Some people name it slightly differently, but that's okay. So now we have two rules that will start this workflow. All right, fingers crossed that we've got this all set up and that when we do make any changes, the workflows run properly and we're all good to go. So we do need to have our repository open, and I've got a dummy document in here. I'm going to create one though. I'm just going to create just a dummy document in here to see if the workflow is running. Now, obviously, you could be importing documents. You could have import agent bringing documents in here. It just depends on what your purpose and process is. And as long as the metadata is being assigned to the document, that should trigger the workflow, right? Because we're looking for that item. Okay, so we'll go ahead and click on document. And because the document called new document already exists, as we know, Laserfiche doesn't like to have the document, a document with the same name in the same folder, so it's going to create that. Now, I do want to assign a actual field value, so I'm not going to assign a template. I'm just going to assign the status field on a document. All right, so we'll go ahead and click OK on that, and then we'll set our process or status on here. So notice we have different field values in the list, and if you want to just leave the document in here without creating or setting the status and then change it later, you can do that too. Or if it's something that's different, we could say, okay, great. We're not going to assign any template. We'll go ahead and say, okay, here's the status. We'll say in process. Now, we wait a moment. Workflow should evaluate the change and try and do something. In this case, we don't have any changes in place. So let's go ahead and change that value and say, this is an approved document. I'm just updating the metadata here. You could open the document if you wanted to, but as soon as you change the value there, it should update and refresh the document. All right, which it was doing yesterday, but now is not. So did I change something between yesterday and today? So we've got our entry changed, template set, and template is 1, 2, or 3. Let's see. You know what? Let's open up this rule, and I've limited a bit of things here so that the template called documents actually needs to be assigned to the template as a template on the document in order for this to actually work. So really, should I take this group out? Yeah, actually I should. Or let's just apply the documents template and see if that fixes it. So looking at our evaluation rule, let's go use the documents template. We've got our approved status on there. It's kind of duplicated here, but we'll click OK, and we should see a better result There we go. As you can see, the workflow then kicked off and then shows us the color on our document. Let's go highlight the document. Let's change the status here. We'll go and change it to denied and click OK. And let's see if it changes. There, the color changed to the same template as we saw there. Okay, so our workflow is working. The template is changing colors. And if we want to, we can even go back to our status and change it to something else, which then should change our template as well. In fact, I'm going to move this over. Notice the template changed when we made that change on the status. And so there's our documents template assigned. Change it of the status value, and it'll change again. Okay, so that is how we get workflow to change templates, and in other words, change the color on the document as well. In the web client, you'll see a bar with the color. However, in the Windows client, like we see here, it's a bit more obvious on the colors on the icons. Now, if you have updated a electronic document like Word or PDF, the color won't necessarily change on the icon. So the PDF icon will stay there. You'll have the template name column that's displaying when you change it, but you won't see the color on it, at least when you're using the Windows client here. Okay, so one thing to be aware of when you're looking at that. Our other topic here we want to take a look at is best practices when changing templates. So as I mentioned, it's okay to have a template with all the same fields, but for different purposes. So it could get a little busy when you're doing that, as we saw with our templates to choose from. And that was all set up in the administration console. So we have our two templates with our colors. You could have different templates for different purposes. You have templates amongst your different departments. Just make them duplicated, except with a slightly different purpose, and I think you'll be fine. All right. And as long as you're not changing up any of the information that would be used by the workflow itself to trigger it, for example, the status field and things like that, if that's not on each template, or you miss it on some of the other templates, that's okay. Make sure that you add that status field to, for example, your documents template if you need to make sure that it is functioning there. So there's a question, I was just pausing to read the question about will the color work on the line itself in the repository? Well, at least in the web client and the Windows client, it just creates a little, well, the Windows client here, it's just going to color a non-electronic document. For PDFs and Word documents, like I said, it just colors it doesn't color anything. So that's the one caveat to that. So the template name is there. In the web client, I think there's a bar next to the document name and icon. So you get it works a little bit better in the web client. But in the Windows client, it will not show colors when looking at PDFs or Word or Excel documents in the list. So just the way Laserfiche works, there's no other way to modify information on screen here. Okay, thank you for that question. Very good. So having said that, wanted to add some bonus content. Many times we want to be aware if there is a document in our folder structure as well. So what I'm going to do is show you a little trick that I came up with for one of our clients, and that way we can mark the folder with an icon and change the color potentially on the folder instead of the document, so that the folder indicates if you have documents with that template, or maybe just has documents in itself, right? Maybe you want to know, hey, if this folder is empty, show the regular vanilla folder color that we see here. But if there's documents in that folder, we want to see a color assigned to that folder. All right, so how do we do that? Well, let's go back to our workflow. All right, and let's edit that workflow. And in my case, I'm actually, when we change color, I then want to have another workflow run that will assign another template to that folder to indicate that there are documents in that folder. So in this case, I'm going to enable a workflow that I built, and we'll show you that in a moment. And if you look over here, we've got this mark folder with color workflow. All right, so I'm going to enable that. We'll publish that change here. And then having done that, let's go ahead and take a look at how that workflow was built. All right, so our final topic for today, let's go view that workflow and see how it was built. So again, I'm going to change my description display and take a look at what we are doing. Now it's a little bit busy. If you want a copy of the workflow for later, I can provide that if you really need one. This one's kind of sophisticated, so if you're an advanced workflow designer, you probably already know how this was done, but we're going to take a look at this and see what's going on. So in this case, you could build this workflow to run on a schedule or call it immediately upon some other workflow running, which I just actually did. But the workflow itself is just set up to do a search for documents created today in a particular folder. So if you see the syntax here, if you want to learn how to read syntax, it says look for anything with any name where its type is D for document, and it's created on today's date. And then we run it a few times a day. And then it's looking in a particular folder path. In my case, I said, hey, let's look in this subfolder called 03 Brighten Somebody's Day. And I don't have the subfolders equals 0 setting in here, which would say just look in this folder. In other words, this look in will look for any documents created today in any folder or subfolders from here on down. All right, so we could test our search and put in today's date, and it should give us a result, which we know there is at least one document in there. Now that we ran the search, we want to do a for each entry, which we've configured to run against any entry that's in the repository. Now, we only need to look for one folder, but theoretically it should find many different documents, and it'll just update and refresh. Even though there might be 2 documents in one folder, it'll only color the folder once, basically. All right, and then in this case, I have a iteration that says, well, as long as there's at least one search result, in other words, anything greater than 0, this part of the workflow will run. Otherwise, we don't really need it to run, do we? And then there's some pattern matching going on. Now, this is the tricky part. This is very sophisticated things, advanced workflow capabilities. And I've basically done some pattern matching to figure out, are there documents and folder levels within this folder path. So it could be 4 or 5 levels deep, and I need to make sure that I traverse the entire folder structure all the way from the lowest folder all the way up to at least maybe one with a number on it. So for example, the folder path, we want to go up and then end at this point and not actually try and mark the repository. We just want to end at the 03 level, so to speak, and any folders within. Okay. So in order to get that workflow to traverse through the folder structure from the, in this case, the new docs folder on up from that folder, as well as any other parent folders, and assign colors, we need to traverse that. And in order to do that, we need that pattern matching. Okay. By the way, the question came up when changing the template in order to change its color. You might have noticed that on the admin console, each of the templates, if we go back and open up and take a look at our denied or approved, both of them have the same fields. You'll want to have the same fields on that template, just slightly different name, assign the color, and then save those. And that way workflow will just change the template. The field values will come across and they won't change. They're always going to be on there. And you could even remove the template in a workflow and leave the field itself. So you can actually just assign fields individually without the template. Obviously, without the template, you would not be able to assign colors. A field cannot assign colors. Be aware of that. A template is the only way to assign colors. The question is, do we need someone to know coding verbiage, or is Laserfiche taking the options? What you see is what you get. We're not doing anything special unless you're referring to the pattern match patterns. This is regular expressions. So just to point this out, you probably want to brush up or just use, in fact, I kind of have started using AI in order to take a look at and use AI to figure out how to do regular expressions to get certain results. So you can kind of cheat. I've got a little bit of experience, so I kind of know what to do and how to build regular expression patterns to figure out what's going on. Although it's becoming easier if we have regular expressions. And Laserfiche is actually going to be, at least in cloud, they will have AI built into their regular expression pattern matching area so that you can ask them English language questions on, hey, how do you build a regular expression that does X? And it'll give you an example, and theoretically it'll be working in there. They hopefully will be adding it to their other products as well, mostly web products. I don't think we're ever going to see it built into the Windows client, though. So to learn these regular expression patterns, you'll have to know somebody who knows these or figure it out on your own. All right, so we've done that. And then I built a bunch of different exceptions if we're looking for invalid folders, make sure that the folder is not empty, and certain other branches to make sure that if it's got 2 folder levels, it goes and assigns colors on each of the correct folders. All right, so I'm not going to go in depth on this one. That's for another day. So, but this workflow is being called, I'm going to discard any changes, by our workflow that actually is changing the template. Once it does that, then we want to say, hey, let's go and update the folders so that we know what's going on. All right, so that I published, so that's in place. We'll minimize that. So now let's go ahead and we'll just simply change the color on our, or we'll change the status on our document. So we'll change that approved status. So it's going to change the template. Now, I should have actually had a template that has all these fields on there, but it's up to you. I'm just demonstrating the capabilities of workflow. Go ahead and click OK. That will change the field value. Workflow will see that and go, aha, I want to do that. And now notice over on the left-hand side, we at least have now our parent folder changed. This one changed as well. I'm going to just clear it, open it back up, and now notice it has applied a color to the folders, indicating that at least within this folder path, there's a folder that has documents in it. How cool is that? So another little bit of trickery with Laserfiche templates. How did I do that? The template itself assigned to the folders, I just created one that simply called it, this folder has documents indicator. You can call it whatever you want, but it's really kind of very simple. And on that one, again, just like before for the documents, where is it alphabetically? There we go. This template, because it's being applied to a folder, may or may not need field values assigned to it. In many cases, you might actually do that, but for demo purposes, I didn't. But then choose your color on this template as well. So this one will be our folder indicator template color. And you can choose, again, any one of the colors available here. That's it, nothing more, nothing less. All right, but be sure to assign a color if you're going to be using that. Laserfiche, again, like I mentioned, will typically assign a if you don't assign a color, it'll choose one for you. So many of these templates here don't have a color assigned, but you'll notice when you're looking in the repository, there will be a color on the document with that template, even though it's not been assigned explicitly. So sometimes that happens. So in order to control that, pick your colors. All right, a little bit of bonus content there. So glad you were here for our training. And I will open it up for questions at this point. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute or pose a question in our questions box. But again, thank you so much, everyone, for attending our webinar for assigning colors to documents and folders.